What's up out there, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of K-Cards Baseball. I appreciate you guys joining me today for part 2 of our series of sports card collecting for beginners. I did make a video quite some time ago which covered just the basics of sports card collecting. So it was about the parallels and inserts and the set sizes and the different types of products that come out during the year and configurations and all different kinds of stuff when it comes to just the basics as far as people that are just getting into the hobby should know. That video honestly does pretty well. It is consistently in my top 10 or top 15 list on a weekly basis, so there is a lot of interest for that video. So I thought I'd follow up with part 2 of sports card collecting for beginners. This video is going to be more in the lines of the things that you should think about before driving headfirst into sports card collecting, baseball card collecting, or anything that you might collect out there as it relates to cards. It might even be for Pokemon cards. I'm not that familiar with Pokemon, but I know that is really popular out there. So this might very well apply to that as well. What we're going to talk about are the 4 halves that you need to think about before getting into baseball card collecting. The first being have a purpose, second being have a budget, the third being have a plan, and the fourth being have fun. So that is what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's get into sports card collecting for beginners part 2. The first half is have a purpose. The joy of collecting or want to make money. Basically the why. Why are you getting into the hobby? What interests you most about it? Are you interested in just collecting a bunch of cards and ripping open boxes and trying to get that one big hit? Or are you more interested in flipping cards, buying singles, not buying any sort of box product, and just flipping cards and doing it that way? Either way is fine. What I would say is whatever trips your trigger when it comes to whatever purpose you're getting into the hobby. If you're more interested in ripping and opening up boxes and doing it that way and building a collection and completing sets and collecting specific players or specific teams, definitely do that. I know there's lots of collectors out there that do that. Most of my subscribers know that I'm that type of collector. Right now I'm still working on completing my Harmon Killebrew set, and I got a little ways to go for that. I'm working on my 1971 top set, which is the set that I had as a kid that I remember the most. So those are things that I'm working on when it comes to collecting, and that is what my primary focus is. What I primarily do as far as the way that I collect is I buy a lot of modern cards, and you guys see me opening up lots of product on the channel and doing it that way because it makes great content, but also it helps me pick up cards that people might be more interested in nowadays as opposed to some of the vintage stuff. So what I do quite often is I open up product and turn around and try and sell some of that so that I can work on building the sets that I'm more interested in building, working on the vintage stuff primarily. So I sell modern to buy vintage is primarily what I do, and I know there's some collectors out there that do that as well. If you're interested in just buying boxes and opening up boxes and ripping boxes and that type of thing, that is great, but there's some things that you need to know about that before going into that side of the hobby. Some positives as far as opening up boxes and opening up product is that there are really cool products that you can chase in any one of the flagship products. For example, Home Field Advantage. There are guys out there that will chase and will buy all the Home Field Advantage cards because they are really nice cards. I can see myself actually trying to complete that particular set. Some guys chase Golden Mirror cards, and Golden Mirror cards is equally a nice set in any one of the top flagship products that come out during the year. Super rare. The HFAs are super rare. The Golden Mirrors are super rare. And there's also other rare cards in any one of the flagship products, such as Heavy Lumber, which is another really nice set that you can get out of any one of the top flagship products. So that is the thrill of the hit, trying to pull one of those cards. The second positive, as it relates to buying boxes and opening boxes, is long-term value. If, for example, you buy Bowman product, we just had 2025 Bowman, which is currently out on shelves. You can pick it up at any one of the Targets and Walmarts. Have plenty of Bowman mega boxes and plenty of Bowman product out there. And in those Bowman boxes, you get the Bowman First cards. And the Bowman First cards, for example, for this year, might not have a tremendous amount of value this year, but as those players continue to develop and grow through their team systems, whether that's through the minor leagues and up to the major league level, and if they become stars at the major league level, those Bowman First cards can really increase in value. You do have to hold on to them for quite some time to really realize the value of opening up and buying that product. But if you're interested in that type of thing, it can yield more long-term value when you're talking about buying and opening up boxes of product. Another positive when it comes to buying and ripping boxes is that money is not nearly as important. You're spending quite a bit of money buying product, but you can't go out and buy boxes of product and open up boxes and product and expect to get immediate return on that investment, unless you get one of the major chase or super rare cards that's in any particular set. That is extremely rare. 95% of the product that you buy out there, whether that's blaster boxes, fat packs, hangers, or hobby boxes, you're really not going to get the value out of that box at the time. Some of the negatives of buying and ripping boxes is that inventory management is really important. As you're buying all these cards, you're going to have to buy ways to store the cards, whether that is through penny sleeves or soft sleeves. You also want to get the proper card and storage boxes rather than just tossing them into shoe boxes. You want to invest in the top loaders or one-touch cases for your really expensive cards. So there is quite a bit of money invested into inventory management. You do have to have a safe place to store your cards. They are susceptible to sun damage and all different kinds of things. They have to be in a dry environment. They can't be in a very humid environment because that'll destroy cards more than anything else. So you do have to take all those things into consideration when you're talking about the storage of cards. Again, for example, I've got black curtains on my card room, so it really decreases the amount of sunlight that could get in and destroy my cards. It also helps when I'm making videos, to be honest with you, not to have sunlight coming in and whatnot. So those are all important things to think about when you're talking about the storage of your inventory. If you're not interested at all in buying and collecting cards and building an inventory and building sets and those types of things, you might be more of a person that is more interested in buying and selling cards for investment or the quick flip. Many of you know, or many subscribers know, that I have a son that also participates in the channel once in a while. I feature him once in a while, particularly at card shows, because he is this type of collector. He's much more interested in buying and flipping cards than he is in opening up boxes. He just buys and sells singles, and that is all he does. He's much more interested in the money side of it than he is actually in building an inventory, which is equally as great of a way to go about collecting if you're into that type of thing. Some positives as it relates to buying and selling signals is that you do get an immediate high return on your investment. If you buy the right card at the right time, you can make decent money on that particular card. I do know quite a few collectors or hobbyists out there that do card collecting in this manner, where they're much more interested in the money they can make off the cards. They also usually have some sort of a PC. Usually it's pretty limited to very few cards, or maybe up to 1,000 cards, but they do have certain cards that they really enjoy and they will keep in their PC or personal collection. The other positives as it relates to buying and selling cards is you do have less inventory. You don't have to deal with having a bunch of space to store a bunch of cards. You don't really have to have special climate controlled environments and those types of things. Much less worry as it relates to things that not a lot of people think about. For example, I have my collection insured, and once you build up an inventory in cards, you do generally want to have those cards insured should a fire happen or a flood or some sort of situation where you'll lose your collection. People that don't have a tremendous amount of inventory are more or less guys that are trying to make a quick turnaround on cards, really don't have to worry about so much the insurance side of collecting, unless their collection gets stolen or some sort of situation like that should occur. The last positive as it relates to the investment side of things, you can really focus on what you want or what you know best. So for example, again, I'll use Trenton for example, and you guys will probably get sick of me using him as an example, but because him and I talk a lot about cards, I know his situation better. He primarily invests in football and basketball cards because that is what he knows best. He studies those, and he does study what is the best cards to buy in football and basketball because that is what he really enjoys. He's not a big baseball guy. He more or less relies on me to give him investment advice if he comes across a card that he is interested in. On the baseball side, it is much like the stock market where you're buying and selling stocks that are hot, selling at the right time, buying at the right time. That is what the main focus is for collectors that are interested in the investment side or buying and selling cards on a regular basis. Some of the negatives as it relates to buying and selling singles is you lose the thrill of the pull. You don't really have that situation where you're opening up a box of cards and get a major hit, and just that thrill that you get or that adrenaline rush that you get out of pulling a really nice card. You do have extreme volatility as it relates to the market. As I just mentioned, you always have to be aware of what cards are hot and what cards are on the decline at any particular time. I just mentioned Roque Sasaki, so his cards are more or less on the decline. Jackson Jobe just got injured as well and is in Tommy John surgery. His cards were actually fairly hot, and they are also starting to cool off because he's probably going to be out the next 2 years. So those are things you have to think about. But on the other hand, you do have guys like Pete Crow Armstrong or even a guy like Corbin Carroll, whose cards are generally increasing in value right now because they are playing very well and are players that are pretty hot in the market right now. And the last negative as it relates to buying and selling single cards is that you are subject to market swings. So again, if a player gets injured, his card values are going to dramatically increase. The biggest example is a situation that happened in 2022 with Wander Franco. We all know that when his cards or when his rookie cards first came out that year, he was by far the hottest guy in the market. Everybody was buying and selling Wander Franco, and some guys really invested big time into him. And then August of his rookie year, he has a legal situation come up and he is no longer to be heard of, and the guys that did spend lots of money on him really took a bath. I have, for example, you guys have seen these before, 2 Wander Franco 2022 Topps Gem Mint 10 cards. And these cards were really sought after and really valuable a couple of years ago before his legal issues came up. And now I use them as card stands when I'm opening up boxes because they aren't worth anything. So those are the things you have to keep in mind if you're interested in buying and selling singles. The next decision you have to make is if you're interested in vintage cards or modern cards. Vintage is pretty much anything prior to 1980, and there are lots of collectors such as myself who are much more interested in vintage cards. I, for example, as I mentioned earlier, are working on my 1971 set as well as completing my Harmon Killebrew set. I'm coming close on the Harmon Killebrews. I got a few more that I want to chase down, and that is what I'm primarily focused on right now. The advantages of collecting vintage is that there is market stability. It is much like, let's say, bonds, where you don't make a tremendous amount of money from one year to the next, but vintage cards of the Hall of Famers, for example, will never decrease in value. They will always continue to increase in value as more and more of their cards come off the market. So the best example of that is that I had a chance to buy a Mickey Mantle rookie card. I think it was like in 1989. It was a pretty decent one. I would probably put it at a 4 or a 5. At the time, it was selling for around $7,000. And right now, that same card is probably in the neighborhood of $250,000. So that is how vintage cards can really increase in value over time. They will never, ever go down in value, whether that is baseball cards, football cards, or basketball cards. Baseball cards are more popular, so their value will increase more regularly than any of the vintage football cards will, unless it's a major Hall of Famer. The other advantage of collecting vintage cards is you can really focus on the cards that you want. If you're interested in a particular team or a particular player or a particular set, you can just focus on those things and completing those particular collections. That is really a good thing about vintage cards. You don't have to go buy a bunch of box product or even single packs to get what you want or complete a set. You can just go and focus your dollars on completing each set or each collection at a time. The advantages of modern cards is that there is more potential value. I would guess that there's probably more modern cards that are worth more than $1,000 out there right now than there is vintage cards that are worth $1,000, because card companies have gotten pretty good as far as issuing those chase cards in any particular set, as we talked about earlier with the golden mirrors or the heavy lumbers or the HFAs. HFAs aren't really worth that much money, but you can get those super rare, limited, one of ones or one of fives or number cards to 10, which can potentially be worth more than $500 to $1,000 on a pretty regular basis in any set that you buy out there. For example, in this optic that you see right in front of you, this is actually a pack of 2023 optic. That was really a good year for CJ Stroud, and his inserts, like a downtown, was extremely valuable in that particular set, easily worth more than $1,000. The other advantage of modern cards is they're much more liquid. You can buy and sell modern cards much more easily than you can vintage cards, because there's many more collectors out there that are interested in modern cards than there is vintage cards. Just go to any card show. I was actually at a card show yesterday, and there's very few dealers out there that are just selling vintage. There's much more dealers out there that are selling modern cards. The next is have a budget. This is an expensive hobby. Be smart with your money. I talk quite often on the channel about my budget. My budget, honestly, to spend on cards or any disposable income that I have on a monthly basis is $75 a week or $300 a month. That is my disposable income. If I want to spend all that $300 on cards, I can choose to do so. If I want to spend it on something else, I can do that as well. But that is my budget every month for cards. And it is important to have that budget, because it is easy to get hung up or caught up into spending money that you might not necessarily have on cards. It is much like gambling in a lot of ways. You really have to control the expense, and you really have to control that disposable income. The next thing to remember when it comes to having budgets is always start small. Think about, if you're much more interested in building a collection, start with just like, for example, the flagship product. Don't dive headfirst into any of the top tier or the more valuable products that Topps releases during the course of the year. I would start basic with the flagship products, for example, Series 1, Series 2, or Update, and then slowly get into some of the mid-range cards such as Chrome or Bowman or Cosmic Chrome or those types of sets before going headlong into like Museum Collection or Gilded or any one of those, even Sapphire, which is a more expensive type of product. So start small, get used to the hobby, get acclimated to it, research different types of sets that come out during the year. I will always do set preview videos on my channel, so if you're interested in a particular set, you can always come back to my channel, check out the set preview, and decide then whether or not it is a set that you're interested in collecting. The final thing to remember when it comes to having a budget is build a card fund. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, I have $75 a week for cards. I generally spend maybe $30 to $40 of that. The other money I just save in my account for a particular card that I want, or card shows that are coming up. We do have the National Card Show that's coming up here at the end of July, so I'm saving up my money for that. So you do have to build that card fund. So if you do come across a card that you really want to buy, the money would be there available to you to spend on that particular card or that particular set, or buying a box of cards that might be a little more expensive, or whatever the situation is, because those situations always arise. So the third have is have a plan. Lay out your goals for where you want to be in the hobby over a certain amount of time. It is the same as in your professional life or your personal life. You always want to have goals as far as where you want to be in those particular segments of your life. And card collecting is no different. If you want to, for example, have a $5,000 collection within 1 year, how are you going to achieve that? If you're going to invest more in singles, if you're going to invest more in buying and ripping product, how are you basically going to get to that level within 1 year or 5 years or 10 years? So lay out a plan for yourself, lay out some goals that you want to achieve, and make sure you're achieving those particular markers. Stay focused on your collection. Focus on what you're most interested in and what really trips your trigger, or what really is the reason that you're interested in the hobby. Just stay focused on that and don't waver. Don't go from, let's say, buying a bunch of product and then deciding to go more on the investment side of things, because then you can kind of end up being a hamster on the wheel where you're constantly chasing your tail. So you always got to be aware of that. Stay focused on what you're interested in, and primarily invest your money and put your energy towards whatever goal you're interested in achieving. The third part of having a plan is being strength driven. Focus on your strengths. As I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a baseball guy, so that is what I primarily focus on. And I know there's plenty of guys out there that just do basketball or football or Pokemon cards, so just stay focused on that. Get really good at it. Get really good at those particular collections. Study it, learn it, watch videos on it, whatever the situation is, and get really versed as far as all the different sets and inserts and whatever there is in any sort of product that you're interested in investing in. And make that be your strength, because when you're at a card show or whatever situation is, when you walk up to a table and you see a card that you're interested in, you have to know about that card, what the value is, what you're looking for in that card when it comes to condition. So those are things that you really have to focus on. Pick one particular thing in the hobby, stay focused on it, and stay driven and study it and get to know it better than anybody else out there, and you will make money at this hobby, or will enjoy this hobby more than some other people do. And that generally ties into our last bullet point here, is whatever brings you the most enjoyment, basketball or football or a particular player or a particular team, whatever you enjoy the most, whatever you're going to have passion about in the hobby, because there's a million different choices to really be interested in this hobby, and that is the beauty of collecting and being a hobbyist. But the final have is have fun. Enjoy it. If you're not enjoying the hobby, then move on to something else, because again, this is not an inexpensive hobby. This is a very expensive hobby, and you can get driving down a rabbit hole pretty quick in this hobby. So you do definitely want to have fun and enjoy it. If you don't have passion about it, if you don't care about it and aren't interested in it, this is a great and most enjoyable, worthwhile, and rewarding hobby to get involved in. There's great people in this hobby. There's great people out there to get to know and to become friends with and build a community with. Those are the most enjoyable things about this hobby. For example, my K-Cards community, I get more enjoyment out of that because of the support I have, and quite honestly, the friendships that I've built through being involved in this hobby. There's, I don't know how many dealers out there that I've gotten to know over the past few years, and I do really enjoy talking to those guys, and we're out there for each other and we have each other's back. And if I find a card that I know a particular guy is really interested in, I'll either buy that card for him at that time or call him up and say, hey, I've got this card that I'm looking at, are you interested in it? And that's having each other's back, and that is the great fun of being involved in this hobby. There's great people out there, and it is amazing to me every day, and it is probably the most rewarding thing about being involved in this hobby, besides just the fun of it. So just really enjoy it, have a good time, have a budget, have a plan, and ultimately have a good time. I'll always be here for you for being my subscriber, or if you're just a person out there that's interested in it, drop me a comment in the comment section, and I will always get back to you. I'll always try and help you out. And if there's anything that I can do to take care of you guys and help you guys out, I've had plenty of subscribers as I'm opening up products say, hey, I really like that card, I'd really like to have it, and I've just sent it to them, because that's what you do as a hobbyist. I don't have any problem doing that type of thing. If I find a card that within reason that someone out there wants, and I'll just send it to them, or whatever the situation is. We always have each other's back, and that is, again, the best thing about this hobby. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, got some information out of it, and hopefully it helps out those new collectors out there that are just getting involved in the hobby. Again, I'm always here for you, and if you ever need anything, just let me know, or you can reach out to whatever other hobbyist that you have built a relationship with. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. Thanks for checking out this video, as well as all the other content on the channel. If you're new to the channel and haven't had a chance to hit that like, subscribe, and throw a comment in the comment section, please go ahead and take care of that for me. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks as well to all my OG subscribers out there. I appreciate you guys more and more every day. You guys mean a tremendous amount to me, and I appreciate everything you guys do, not only for me, but also for the hobby. Thanks, guys. Be safe out there, and as always, happy collecting.